Come, take a walk with us through historical Pultneyville. We will take you on a seasonal walking tour that contains photos from 1864. You will meet some of the people of Pultneyville up close, as well as one from the past. Slip on those walking shoes and come along.
Manchester will walk with the Pultneyville tour from Gates Hall through Pig Lane to the shore. And the tether of tales will fill our minds with the War of 1812 and Captain True.
Hello, I'm Chester Peters. I am the teller of tall tales and the maker of tall clocks. Also, I'm the historian for the town of Williamson. Come on, why don't you just go with me and we'll take a little walking tour of the village of Pultneyville.
Today we find ourselves sailing on the shore of Lake Ontario at Pultneyville, which is one of the 3 hamlets that lie within the township of Williamson. This site where Salmon Creek enters Lake Ontario has been used for many years by people who have been interested in lake trade. It was first used by the French in the late 1600s as a stopping place to trade with the Indians, Pultneyville being at the end of an old Indian trail. Later it was used by the early settlers. The post road, being built in the early 1800s from Canandaigua to Pultneyville, was right after the establishment of the first post office here in 1806. Now let us go over to Centennial Park.
Centennial Park was a gift of the land agent here in 1825. Prior to that, in 1824, he'd given a approximately 1-acre site up in what is now Lakeview Cemetery, on which the settlers could build a church. But the settlers, figuring that the village was going to be nearer the waterfront, decided not to pick up the option, and so they wanted to build their church down here nearer what they figured was going to be the village. So he gave them this park, which is approximately 1 acre of land, in 1825. Here we have in the park on the west side what was known as Williamson School District Number 1. It was the first district within the town. It was first constructed here on the site back in around 1808. And that was the old wooden building which burned in 1816. It was rebuilt, and it was large enough at that time to house 100 students. So there must have been a sizable population in the area. This present structure was constructed around 1845, and it was used just about 100 years. It was in the mid 1940s when they centralized and joined the Williamson Central School District. Prior to that, there were only 4 or 5 grades that were here for several years, the older children all going to Williamson. Since the mid-1940s, this has served as a residence up till the present day in 1988. Gates Hall sits on land that was leased from the park back in 1892, so their 100-year lease will soon be running out. Originally, it was built on the park as Union Church back in 1826 and used as a church until the Methodists built their own sanctuary in 1874. For a number of years, it was just used as a community hall. Lecturers spoke here. It was used for community events such as plays. It was used for an auditorium for School District Number 1. But the building fell in disrepair and there was a public drive put forth in 1892, and enough funds were generated at that time to remodel the hall. Previous to that time, there was no basement under it, so it was raised and a basement installed, and 18 feet was added on the rear of the building for a stage. So what used to be Union Church at that time became Gates Hall. And the reason it was called Gates Hall was that one of the larger contributors was Miss Mary Gates. And now each summer, for one thing that we're certain of, that there's usually a Gilbert and Sullivan production put on here at the time of homecoming, the third weekend in July. The Reformed Church here, formerly known as the Dutch Reformed Church, was constructed in 1872 by Rufus Moses, one of the local builders. The reason it was the Dutch Reformed Church, there was a big influx of Dutch settlers in the mid to the end of the 1800s, and so holding to their old tradition, they all wanted a Dutch Reformed Church. Previous to building this structure, they met in a chapel down here at the end of Salmon Creek Road, that chapel being moved from East Williamson, where it was formerly used as a Presbyterian church.
The Methodist Church was constructed in 1874. Up to that time, the Methodists used Union Church. Back in the 1840s, the Methodists purchased a plot of land where the corner store now stands, and they thought it undesirable and moved up Hamilton Street about 500 feet and purchased a lot from John Creighton, the local carriage maker, and built on the present site. The corner store was originally constructed by Russell Smith in the late 1920s as a gas station. The Smith family were old residents, and his grandfather at one time ran the Pultneyville Hotel. He was also a lake captain. The store has been the scene of many community activities. Russ Smith was a local band leader, and for many years the Pultneyville band met under his direction and practiced in the corner store.
This was a residence of Rufus Moses, who was the local builder. He built the Reformed Church. He did the woodwork on the Waters house, the cobblestone house, which is up on the West Lake Road. Later he moved to Sodus, and he built many of the buildings in the village of Sodus. Some of them were the Presbyterian Church and the Opera House and some of the larger homes. But one of the strange things is that Rufus always came back to Pultneyville for his lumber, because most of his lumber came in here into the harbor by ship from Canada. Rufus was quite a character. I've heard some of the old-timers tell that when he was sitting at the table, someone would say, have any salt or have any pepper, Ruf? And he'd say, hell no. He said, I don't need any pepper. I married one. You see, he had married Liza Pepper, the daughter of old Deacon Abraham Pepper here from Pultneyville.
Now our tour will enter the historic district, which comprises about 30 structures.
This is the AUCHANPAUGH house, built around 1850. The AUCHANPAUGHs were old residents here, and they at one time had a harness shop and a drugstore down on the waterfront. The house has been changed quite a bit. The front porch here at one time had a railing above it going all across the roof, and it had clapboards on and blinds, and it had pilasters on the corner and brackets under the cornice. These have all been removed during modernization periods.